There was this striking convergence that on the same day we had something very similar, a global survey of what was going on with mental health, revealing the fact that we're facing a mental health epidemic, and it all sounded very similar to what's happening with the climate crisis, with climate breakdown, which is what I call it, because calling it climate change is like calling an invading army unexpected visitors. These two things published on the same day, which seem completely disconnected. Mental health, climate breakdown. How can you make that connection? Well, there's a breakdown in both cases, and it seems to me that they share at least some of their roots. And now, how can this be? Well, I think you can begin to open up this subject with this very interesting and useful word, alienation. And the amazing thing about alienation as a term is that it means many different things, but in my view, they all converge into the same place. You can be alienated from the work you do, disconnected and not actually in charge of it, not in control of it, somebody else taking the major product of your labor away from you. That's very much the Marxian approach to alienation, though of course his definition of it didn't stop there. You can be alienated from each other. You can be alienated from the rest of the living world and from the material world in general. And you can be alienated from yourself. And the sort of loss of self, the loss of the sense of who you are, of self-belonging, is a major component of alienation. Now, all these and other forms of alienation converge like the cracks in a dam into psychic rupture. Converge into a sort of generalized mental breakdown which corresponds to the climate breakdown. Now, what does climate breakdown have to do with alienation? Well, a huge proportion of this is driven by consumerism. I mean, consumerism, which is the necessary concomitant of economic growth, because those people who are targeted by corporations, by very rich people who want them to buy their products and services, are principally those who have disposable incomes, for obvious reasons, which means that, by definition, their needs have already been met. And probably their strong desires have already been met, and probably their weak desires have already been met. So basically you have to sell them stuff they don't need and they don't want. And the only way you can do that is by saturating people in the consumerist mindset to the extent that it becomes universal. It becomes the plastic soup in which we swim. We can't see it anymore. It is this universal ideology, saturated with advertising, saturated with marketing, and then inviting it into our own lives, believing we're inviting in something completely different. And what I'm really talking about in this case is celebrity culture.